we're here to talk about the Quran and its transmission. And let's be clear about what the focus of this is. It's the claim that the words that come from the lips of Muhammad from 610 to 632 AD are exactly identical with the words that is found in the Qurans that we have today. What we're not talking about is English translations of the Quran. There's about 106 of those, but we're only focusing on the Arabic. So you're going to learn some Arabic tonight from me. One of my other jobs is I teach Arabic. Many Muslims make incredible claims about the Quran. This is one from the Turkish billionaire, Fethullah Gulen. He says, the Quran's text is entirely reliable. It's not been altered, edited or tampered with since it was revealed. All Muslims know only one Quran, perfectly preserved in all its original words. American writer Suzanne Hanif says, the Holy Quran is the only revealed scripture in the history of mankind that has been preserved from the present to the present time in its exact original form. Jamaluddin Zarabozo says, you can travel to any part of the world and pick up a copy of the Quran and you'll find it the same throughout the world. Abdullah Yusuf Ali, a famous translator of the Quran, says, the Arabic text we have today is identical to the text that was revealed to the Prophet. Not even a single letter has yielded to corruption. This book that comes out of Abu Dhabi and available in bookshops around Australia says the Quran has remained unchanged, even to a dot has not changed. No variation of the text can be found. Maulvi Muhammad Ali says, no copy differing even in a diacritical point is met with. A manuscript with the slightest variation in text is unknown. And finally, Al-Hajj Jijola decided to borrow from Jesus' words. He says, the Quran is fully preserved and not a jot or tittle has been changed or left out. So these are the kinds of typical claims that you'll often find people making, but there's one thing wrong with them, they're not true. If you go to this bookshop in Jordan, which I've been to in Amman, you'll be able to see 24 different versions of the Arabic Quran. I'll put the English terms up there. You can order them online and they'll be here within a couple of days. Or you could go to Lebanon. And again, there are 13 different Arabic versions of the Quran that you can buy. These are not English translations, these are Arabic versions. But if you want to save yourself your airfare, you can just come to my table and have a look at my little collection of 17 versions that I've collected. As I've travelled and lived in Muslim countries, gone to Islamic bookshops and said, what versions of the Quran do you have? So how did so many Arabic versions arise? Where did that come from? Well, they didn't come from Muhammad. We have to go back to his time. Muhammad never wrote a Quran and he never sanctioned a full written version of the Quran. There's two reasons for this. Firstly, he couldn't read or write. He was illiterate. And secondly, he could have received a revelation right up until the moment that he died. So the Quran, in effect, couldn't be completed until he'd breathed his last breath. And as a result, his followers had to wait until he died in 632 to compile a full Quran. There were some verses written on stones and leaves and camel bones. There's one there, Surah Al-Fatiha. And many people memorized some of these verses. But after his death, many of his followers who'd memorized parts of the Quran, or the whole of the Quran, they were called Huffaz, were killed in a battle in Yamana in December 632. And there was a fear that the Quran might be lost. And so the Caliph, Muhammad's successor Abu Bakr, ordered that a Quran be written down in full, and he got Zayd bin Thabit to go around and collect the parts that he could find, get them from people, and write them on a scroll. And this copy was given to Hafsa, to one of Muhammad's wives. But he wasn't the only person who was collecting copies of the Quran. In the Hadith, Sahih al-Bukhari says the Quran was collected in the lifetime of the Prophet by 4 men, and it names them, Ubay ibn Ka'b, Abu al-Darda, Mu'adh bin Jabal, Abu Zayd, and Zayd bin Thabit. And Muhammad had told his followers, there are 4 men that you should learn the Quran from. and he named them Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Salim, Mu'adh, and Ubay bin Ka'b. Notice there's also some of the same people who were collecting the Quran in the lifetime of the Prophet. But there was a problem. It was a big problem that they did not agree on what the Quran should be. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud would not accept the final 2 surahs or chapters of the Quran, and he wouldn't accept Al-Fatiha, the first chapter. He said that was just a prayer that Muhammad prayed. He said, do not mix up with the Quran that which is not in the Quran. These 2 surahs are not included in the Quran. So he, being one of the people that Muhammad had said, learn the Quran from this man, had a version which only had 111 surahs, whereas the current Quran has 114 surahs. One of the other men, or 2 of the other men, Abu Musa, one of the 4 recommended by Muhammad, included 2 extra surahs that are not in today's Quran. We still have copies of these, and if you read them, they read very much like Quranic chapters. They were called Surat al-Khala and Surat al-Hafth, also known as Surat al-Qanud. So that made his Quran had 116 chapters or surahs. Another man, Ubay ibn Ka'b, combined 2 of the chapters together, making 115 chapters. And so within 20 years of Muhammad's death, 4 major collections of the Quran were being accepted in different cities. And you can see them. These are, again, some of the men that Muhammad said learned the Quran from these men. And they had differing numbers of chapters, things that they accepted, things that they included, things that they left out. And there were about another 12 other versions that were also floating around at this time. As Islam continued to spread throughout the world, this then became a problem. As Muslim troops were gathering on the border of Armenia to invade it, Muslim troops came from all over the parts of the Muslim world, and they were in a mosque in near Armenia and reciting different versions. And they said those who follow Abdullah ibn Mas'ud's version go there. Those who follow Abu Musa go there. And they were reciting the same chapters, but they were reciting different things. And a bit of a dispute rose up about which one was the correct version. And so this man named Hudhayfa went and complained to the Caliph Uthman. He said, we need to have only one version. And so Uthman ordered a committee of 4 men, include one of them being Zayd bin Thabit, to compile an authorized Quran. And he said, gather up all the other bits that you can find and burn them. Not all of the copies were destroyed. Some of the people hid theirs. They were told to hide it so they couldn't be destroyed because they believed they were authentic. People rewrote the verses after the first copies came out, and so multiple copies continued to circulate. Unfortunately, we don't have any original copy of the Quran from this period. German scholar and Muslim convert, Professor Anne-Marie Schimmel, says that no original Quranic text has survived. And Professor Tayyar Altıkulak, who's a Turkish scholar, speaks of the first mushafs, or the first codices or collections of the Quran, having been destroyed or disappeared due to wars and natural disasters. And he calls this one of the greatest weaknesses and pains of the Islamic world. But that we have copies of early manuscripts, not the originals, but some very early manuscripts. And you can go and travel around and see these in Istanbul. There's a couple there. The Cairo one, in Sana'a, big collection. I'll talk about that later. Istanbul and Tashkent have a version there. The National Library in France has some. Birmingham has some. They're scattered around. These are probably the 10 most ancient ones, but they're not the same. You can look at those. In fact, we have facsimiles of these early collections here. My student Dennis can show you those, and you can compare them and see some of the difference that exists right from the earliest days. Some of those problems you find words being inserted into the text. This is one copy from the French National Library, and you can see there the brown writing, but in the midst of it is a little black word called bimithlihi, which is similarly. That wasn't in the original, but at a later stage, someone put that in so it would conform with the standard text that's accepted today. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud's and Ubay bin Ka'b's versions did not have that word in there. It was added in later on. See that there. In the Topkapi manuscript, you can see again a phrase that's been added in there that it says, Allah yakhluqu ma yasha. So God creates what he wills. Again, that wasn't in the earlier text, but it was added in later on. So these are some of the earliest ones that we have. This is another one in the French National Library. Whoops, someone's ringing me up. Thank you. Was that you telling me to stop talking? No. The National Library, the word they, whom, has been erased from the text because it's not in the standard text that we have today. Sometimes you'll get overwriting, text being rubbed out and new text written over top of it. And again, you can come and have a look at those and see those. So each one of the 10 earliest Quranic manuscripts has multiple corrections. There are tens, sometimes hundreds of corrections in each manuscript. So they've gone through a history. And usually the corrections are made to make it conform to the standard text of the Quran. But there was something that all of these texts had in common, and that was the absence of dots. The earliest Qurans had no dots in them. And you might think, well, why is that important? Well, a little Arabic lesson here. Arabic has 28 letters. Of those, you can see the dots there, which distinguish the letters. 14 of them have dots, and without those, you can't tell the difference between them. In fact, if we take the dots away, we're left with a text which is a little bit of a mystery. It's very difficult for people to be able to read that. There's 21 letters that could be something else. Arabic is, so there's only 7 unambiguous letters in the text. Arabic is based on 3-letter roots, and the simplest noun or verb that you can have has just 3 letters, and this is a kind of the skeleton without the dots. And if we put the dots in there, we can create a whole series of different words. So we put the dots in different places, 1 above, 1 below, 2 above, 2 below, or 3 above, and you see the different words that will come out of that. So they're quite significant. If you've got a text which has no dots in it, it's very difficult to understand what it is. And there I've put in the vowel markings or the tashkil. I'm just wondering how many people here can read Arabic. So read Arabic, maybe Urdu, Farsi, so Arabic text. We've got quite a few here. Okay. Well, maybe one of you could tell me, whoops. What does that, can anybody read any line from that text? Anyone willing to have a go? I can't do it. Someone can? Oh, where's that? Oh, okay, yes, Sammy, yes.
Second half,
yeah.
say Bismillah.
Yes.
Because I know that in my background.
You know what?
There is no dots.
Yes.
It's supposed to be Bismillah, Rahman, Rahim. But there is no dots.
No dots, yeah.
To
Oh, okay, because you know that's what it is.
I'm putting the dots.
Putting in your head, yes, yeah. Can you read the rest of it? Can you read the rest of it? Yeah, only that bit, yeah, yeah. Thank you, Sammy. If you put the dots in, it becomes very easy to read. It's quite legible, and the dots and the vowel markings make it possible for someone to be able to read it. This is the Birmingham text, by the way, which I'll talk a little bit about later on. But as we compare, and with my 17 versions here, I've got a team of Arab scholars who've gone through them, and we've looked at some of the differences that you find in them. And you can see here the words that are circled. You can see at the beginning of the word, some have got 2 dots above or 2 dots below. It changes the meaning of them. Excuse me, here's another one. You've got the word kabirun, or another one kathirun. They change in the meaning because of the putting the dots in its place. Here's another one, the Hafs version and the Ruh version, so 2 of the ones that we have there. And again, the Hafs version actually breaks a grammatical rule. You should have a verb with a feminine noun. This one has a feminine a masculine verb with a feminine noun. But the Ruh version actually corrects it. So at some stage, someone said, no, those dots should be in another place, and so they've come out with a slightly different version of it. The Susi version, again, we've got the word he, yukaffiru, he will expiate, changes to nukaffiru. So the dots do actually make a change in the meanings of them. Another one, this one actually changes a verb from an active verb. Many a prophet fought, and the word is qatala. And in the other version, where they've put different markings in there, many a prophet was killed, qutila. So it changes the meaning of the version. Sometimes you'll get a verb changing from a statement to a command. So in the Hafs and the Warsh versions, these would be the two most popular ones in the world. The Saudis are pushing the Hafs version. The Warsh one is popular in the Maghreb, in Algeria and Tunisia and Morocco. It gets changed to a command called say. How widespread are these versions? Well, I mentioned before I've got a team of Arab people who are going through these different versions. We're finding an average of 100 to 150 consonantal differences or dots in every version. There's about 5,000 vowels or marking differences per version. So there's quite significant changes in them, and it's a fair bit of work for us to go. And on the left-hand side, you can see some of the work that our team has been doing. None of this, by the way, is a surprise to Islamic scholars. Back in the 900s, so over 1,000 years ago, this librarian, a guy called Abi Yaqub Nadin, had a list of books, a bibliography of books about discrepancies of the Quranic manuscripts, written by 7 different authors around that time, or that had come into being around that time. Let's talk about the Birmingham copy, because this is the one that's really got the news last year. The Quran actually only consists of 2 pages. It's not a full Quran. People refer to it as a Quran, but it's actually just 2 pages. It has been carbon dated about 568 to 645 with 95% accuracy. So they have to do a kind of a time period. So that's about, somebody do the maths for me, about 60, maybe 80 years. And it can say, well, we're pretty sure it happened during that period. If you get a smaller period, then your accuracy decreases. Of course, carbon dating only dates the animal skin. It was on a calf skin, and that tells us when the animal died or was killed. It doesn't tell us actually when the thing was written. The equivalent might be finding a 1970s exercise book in the back of your filing cabinet and writing on it now, and people looking at it say, oh, 1970s, but it was actually written in the 21st century. So that's one of the problems we have with this one. It's dating the skin. It's more difficult to date the ink. But certainly paleographers say that the ink or the writing on it comes from a later period. Now, the second problem is that if it was written in the earlier date, it actually predated Muhammad. It actually was written before he was born, or before he even became a prophet. And this would suggest that Muhammad was borrowing pre-existing verses rather than receiving them directly from Allah. So either way, whether you go an early dating or later dating, it's problematic. But more exciting was this discovery in Sana'a in 1972. They found over 1,000 ancient Qurans over many centuries, and these are among the earliest Quran manuscripts that exist. Amongst these 1,000, there were 20 potato sacks. They found this thing which is called a palimpsest. It's an animal skin which was written on at one time, and then the ink was washed off and they wrote over top of it. Animal skins were expensive, so they used to reuse them for texts. But using ultraviolet photography, we can now read the lower text, and we see that these texts were actually from the Quran. And I'll show you some examples of that. But both of them have been added to. There have been changes on these texts. And so we effectively get 4 texts out of this one animal skin. So you've got a lower text and the corrections that are made on that, and then the upper text and the corrections that are made on that. The lower text is about 73% in concurrence with the Quran that we have today. The upper text is much closer to the standard text, but still not 100%. some of the differences that are there, we find some different words there, and you can see they're in the colour blue, and for those of you who can read Arabic, you can see the word Jahannam written above the word for hell, and underneath in the blue is the word, if you put the dot in the right place, you get an-nar, the fire. And you can see the other changes that there are there as well. Sometimes it's got words that are missing from today's standard text, and maybe they were removed at a later stage. And we've got some words that are in the standard text but were not present in those very earliest texts. So we're looking at a text which is quite a kind of a forerunner to these early texts. At several times, Muslim leaders have attempted to ensure that there was only one Quran. And I mentioned in 652, Caliph Uthman ordered that all the variant Qurans be burned. The ones that that weren't kind of accepted by his committee of four. In 1924, the Egyptian government found that there were many variants around there, and so they took all those variants and they sunk them in the Nile. Some people say, well, the Quran or Islamic teaching talks about the 7 ahruf, the Saba ahruf. So Muhammad said you can read the Quran in 7 ways. And the question to that would be, so why did Uthman only keep one? Why didn't he allow 7 copies to circulate? And if he was alive today and he saw my collection there of 17, which ones would he say, well, this is not the acceptable one and these ones this one is acceptable and these other ones need to be burned? Which ones would the Egyptians feel the need to destroy nowadays? So just to summarize, we began by looking at the quotes from 7 Muslim scholars that not a word, dot, jot or tittle of any Quran had been changed, and that you can see the same Quran all around the world. And we've seen that to be a false statement. We also saw that Muhammad's earliest followers had a variety of versions of the Quran. There was not one standard version that was there. They remembered what he said in quite different ways. So, in effect, we don't know what the original Quran said. We've got the copies that have been made, but we know that there was some dispute amongst them. Certainly, Uthman thought that he could destroy all of the ones except the one that he thought was the most acceptable one that came from his committee of 4 people. We've seen that the 10 earliest manuscripts all differ from each other, and again you can come and have a look at the facsimile copies here with Dennis afterwards. We've also seen that there were no dots on the earliest manuscripts, and the absence of these dots results in great ambiguity in the text, and you can put the dots in different places and come up with quite different meanings. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the evidence is all there before you. I think it's patently clear to all of us that the Quran has been changed. Thank you.
Now hold these up, and what do we now know about these Qurans?
Nothing.
Amjad says there's nothing. Now Amjad, do all these Qurans agree with each other?
No.
Are there 2 Qurans that agree with each other?
No.
Is there even one Quran that agrees with the Quran we have here today?
No.
This is the Quran we use today.
It's the same Quran.
This is not the same Quran as these ones we have here today. Surah Ayah says, Yaksibuna. What's that mean? Yaksibuna.
They lie.
It means they lie. Okay? And over on this side, it says Yukazibuna. What does Yukazibuna?
They cause in lies.
They accuse others of lies. 140. Here you have Takakune. Takaluna versus Yakaluna. So Takaluna versus Yakaluna.
They say, you say, and they say.
Okay, you say or they say. And the verse says, or do you say Abraham, Jacob, and his offspring were Jews? Over here in the waters it says, or do they say that Abraham, Jacob were Jews?
Come in here. Get in. Get in.
I'm not going to go in there.
Exactly.
Down here and discuss. You won't be in the camera. You're showing up. Hang on. Ask them to come down on my level and discuss.
No, one of them is correct.
One is my book.
Which one is it? Which one is it?
All of them. All of them.
Which one?
All of them.
Okay. They're all of them saying.
He can. He can.
Let's unpack. Let's unpack. I want to.
What is?
Now, is that different? Are these different?